Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga, where we talk about Spider-Man, read Spider-Man, and we all want to die. My name is Vincent Faust, and I'm joined by
Matt.
And Mike.
What's our
And
sponsor?
Sponsor this week is, instead of reading this garbage, go read Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man, because it's these issues today that make me realize, wow, this book was unreadable for like 15 years.
15's maybe pushing it. That's 2003 or 2004.
That is pushing it.
Mm.
Since One More Day, it's been unreadable until now.
All right, well, okay. Matt is having hesitations. How far do
He's
you
having
go back,
hesitation
Matt?
because he knows I'm right, and he just doesn't want. And he's only thinking of justifying the purchases he's made in that time.
No, not at all. I've made some awful purchases in that time. Unreadable is a strong word, and One More Day is not the best cutoff either.
All right.
Since past.
So like 2006.
Since past.
So today we're talking about some random stuff from Brand New Day era, which references Ben Reilly and some Clone Saga stuff. I'm calling this episode "Who Was Ben Reilly?" because that's sort of the name of like one tiny backup, but makes the most sense here. So first, we're reading Amazing Spider-Man Annual 36, and I believe recently 42 came out, but they've gone back and forth on the numbering because before 42, the annual before Annual 42 was Annual 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you enjoy getting 2 Amazing Spider-Man annuals in the same year because Marvel thinks we're stupid?
Yeah.
Well, the second one was pretty good, actually.
Well, what was
I didn't read either of them.
The second one was really good. The first one was absolute trash, but I mean, what do you expect?
You have them backwards. Not the Saladin Ahmed Venom one was number 1.
Yeah.
42.
Yeah. But before that.
Oh, so number 1 came out after number 42.
Yes.
Oh, it did? I thought it was the other way around.
No, 42 is
Slot. It's about ready? It's about the clone of Ned Leeds. I want to die.
Okay, so 36. Here is some of our status quo stuff going on. The marriage of Aunt May to J. Jonah Jameson Sr. is impending, and J. Jonah Jameson Jr., he is the mayor of New York at this point, right?
Yeah.
But who's top cop in the Marvel Universe?
That would be Norman Osborn. And they, for some reason, Jameson has flown everyone out to Boston for their engagement party. And Peter Parker meets all his relatives, which I think are showing up here for the first time. And I don't know that they really show up much again.
For the first and only time, Peter Parker's relatives.
And he acts like an impotent child the entire time. So hey, it's post One More Day Spider-Man.
He just acts like an asshole.
Well, who is more out of character, actually, Peter Parker or Jameson?
Or Jonah?
Both
I
out
don't
of
know.
character.
Like Jonah doesn't like Peter Parker, and especially like you can understandably in this era they're gonna play that up. But like he is literally acting like an 8-year-old kid who is about to have a stepfather or a stepmother in this case.
Yeah, it's
really wonky.
I'm gonna have to say Peter's more out of character because he's the prominent character starring in the book.
I mean, it's Peter, but it's pretty close.
And the worst part about this for me, like I haven't read all that much of Brand New Day, but this sort of characterization I associate with Dan Slott. This isn't written by Dan Slott, so has it truly been this bad since One More Day?
Yep.
That's.
So the whole Riley family shows up, and not even so. Peter and Jonah are already making us cringe out of character, but then these newly introduced relatives of Peter Parker make these awkward, terrible comments. They dig into him about him not being married, which is literally just like a kick into the thigh, a kick into the shins of older Spider-Man fans. Well,
No,
not only that, but one of them is drawn exactly like MJ.
well, they do a
Yeah.
little like colors of the rainbow hair colors deal. Yeah, it's just like the marriage comment was just super awkward because it's impossible to not pick up any references like that as meta in this era. Like it's just impossible. And then Pete dodges that by making a joke about, or a relative jokes about maybe he's gay, and Pete's like, "No, I'm not gay." And then there's this awkward thing where he's commenting to himself about how he's attracted to his cousins,
And that he wishes he was gay.
which technically they're not blood related.
I don't care. I
I
don't
was-
care.
I was waiting for that to be pointed out, and I'm not sure if that would be better or worse.
This is teetering on some trouble bullshit.
Well, Vince, I think now would be a perfect time to say who the writer and artist of this issue were, because we haven't done that.
Yeah, so the writer of this issue is Mr. Marc Guggenheim. Recently long time ago at this point, departing writer of X-Men Gold. He's also written Young X-Men. He's written some Flash starring Bart Allen. He's written various other things, other X-Men stuff.
Part of the writing staff for Arrow at one point too.
Yeah, he's involved with CW stuff, and he wrote the Green Lantern movie.
Oh, so nothing's been good.
Also a Percy Jackson movie.
One they made two.
What?
And so
Wait, no, real quick. Percy Jackson movie. Which one?
I think it's Sea of whatever. I don't really know which one's the first.
No.
Here's a question: or is there a single good Percy Jackson movie out of the two of them? No.
No, but that's the worst one.
I'll go on a personal tangent, which no one cares about. In middle school, so my middle school, like many middle schools, was 5th through 8th grade, but I came in to that school in 6th grade, and 5th and 6th graders at that school took a Latin class, and it's the same teacher, the same people, the same kids and everything like that. So some of it is cumulative, and part of it was that for some reason they read the Percy Jackson books. And so early into the year, I went on a short little vacation for my uncle's wedding, and I was handed, and
Wow, is this story going to go anywhere?
being the new responsible kid at school, I went to all my teachers and I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for like 4 days. What can I do to get ahead? What am I going to miss?" And this Latin teacher hands me like literally every single Percy Jackson novel, and she's like, "You can read these." I didn't open them.
What did you read instead?
I don't know, probably comic books. I don't.
There you go.
At that point, but I don't really know anything about Percy Jackson, but I just have a negative perception against it.
That's just shout out for the middle schools out there. Instead of having your kids read Aragon or Percy Jackson, have them read comic books.
Aragon? What middle school? How do you read Aragon?
I don't know. My school didn't make us read Aragon. I just want to dog shit on that book because it's not good.
No, it's not.
I just remember a lot of kids being disappointed that summer when the movie came out.
Yeah.
The artist here is Pat Oliff, who I think we saw not too long ago, like maybe 3 episodes ago. He was drawing some Spider-Girl.
I have a question. Is this the same artist from Mark Waid's Incorruptible? The panel of Ben Reilly standing over the burning house behind him looks like exactly like that first cover of Incorruptible.
I'm not sure. You do mean Incorruptible and not Irredeemable, correct? The flagship was Irredeemable. Incorruptible is the spinoff.
Yeah, Incorruptible is the spinoff with the villain who goes good.
No. The main book is the villain who goes good.
Yeah, no, that's the hero that goes bad.
I don't know.
That's irredeemable.
Let's check. Well, the Irredeemable is drawn by Peter Krause.
Okay.
And Incorruptible, I do not think is drawn by Pat. It's not. I don't think it's Pat Olive. But Pat Olive, as we have mentioned before, drew Untold Tales of Spider-Man, and I don't think this issue's like amazing.
It's not.
But I don't think the art is the major issue here. But as we're going along with this stuff, we're also being fed flashbacks. Apparently, Peter Parker lit a guy's house on fire and is beating the shit out of him while his family burns to death in the background. And that happened several years ago in Portland. And if we remember, Peter Parker and Mary Jane moved to Portland for a little bit while she was pregnant, and they were married. And as we are getting fed more of that, a villain attacks with creepy Wolverine arms. He's more like, what is it, Bakara, the Mortal Kombat character? Is it Bakara?
I don't play
It's
Mortal
not
Kombat.
Bakara, it's
Zangief.
no, it's not Zangief. God damn it.
Baraka.
Baraka, yeah, it's Baraka.
He's got, well, it's also like Deadpool from X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Well, yeah, that's why they called him Baraka Pool.
He's got arm things. He also has big teeth. It's really, really stupid powers. But we'll get to what they are as we go on.
Yeah, and somehow it's even stupider.
He's trying to kill Peter Parker, and then he gets annoyed when Spider-Man shows up, so he stabs Spider-Man in the chest, which is, he quickly wraps up with webbing, so that's fine. And he finally introduces himself. His name is Raptor, aka Damon Ryder. Actually, he's trying to kill Ben Reilly. And then we get some flashback scenes of that Peter's going through, where he's remembering about Ben Reilly, and it's literally just copy and pasted art from sequences of the Clone Saga, just arranged into squares, and it looks really lazy.
It's some intern did that.
Pete tells him that Ben is dead, of course, and so Raptor runs away. Pete doesn't get to say goodbye to his new relatives. Also, we glossed over it because it's just random flavor along the issue. Pete has an affinity for Boston, and vice versa. Bostonites like Spider-Man, and Marc Guggenheim goes way over the top with accents. This is like some Claremont shit.
My favorite part was when he has a guy in the background screaming "Jeter sucks" because baseball reference, and then it was so good that he thought he'd do it again and capture the same humor that was so electric the first time.
We get references to Chowder. Lots of Red Sox stuff.
I guess if we were to choose, what's everyone's favorite Boston food?
Boston food. Well, gotta give me that New England clam chowder.
Right?
Yeah. Chowder, I guess.
I agree.
I absolutely adore that bowl of soup. Put in a good old bread bowl. I'm not supposed to eat that, but maybe I'm feeling a little naughty today. Eat that bread bowl up with it. It's great.
Matt, we decided it. You can eat bread. It's the mold that makes you sad.
Oh, you're right. It is.
The end of this issue, Peter Parker Googles this Damon Ryder guy, and he finds a police sketch from this arson, and it looks exactly like him. So, clone shenanigans, Ben Reilly murdered a family. Now, we're going to jump around a little bit because sort of technically, Web of Spider-Man Volume 2, Number 1 comes next, kind of, not really. It's flashback. So we're now around 2010-ish, leading into the Gauntlet. A lot of the Web of Spider-Man was just an anthology, and it's like, here's a story that does a origin story for one of the Gauntlet villains. Here's a random Spider-Girl story for some reason, and here are these backups which jump way back to the Clone Saga.
I like how the cover of issue 1 is bold enough to state that inside this comic book you find 3 amazing stories, and that's just not true.
This one that we are reading is written by James DeMatteis and drawn by Val Semex. I don't know how to say his name.
Sneak.
He can be a decent artist, I believe, but I don't feel like Googling. I believe he drew most of Aztec. What's the subtitle in that book?
The Ultimate Man.
Yeah, Aztec the Ultimate Man. But I think technically the name of the book is JLA Presents Aztec the Ultimate Man.
You are correct.
Co-written by Grant Morrison and Mark Millar.
If anyone listening, that's the one book I'm missing for my Grant Morrison JLA completion. So, just hit up our gifts and on our gift list that doesn't exist for the show.
So this is sort of set between the annual and the issues, which we'll get to shortly, but I guess it's not really. So this is a story focusing on Kaine, which we haven't seen in a while. In fact, I believe this is his first appearance since the end of the Clone Saga. And somehow in the meantime, Kaine is part cyborg and imprisoned. So he starts tripping. He's sedated. He's on some kind of drugs. He starts tripping balls and imagining people. And so it's almost like a really shitty Christmas Carol. So first we have Ben Reilly with a red, like really red mullet, and it's like I don't even know if you can call this a mullet. It's like this. Yeah. It's like a mullet.
The other thing with that is that Ben was not the one that was really rocking the mullet. It was Peter. So I thought that was weird that they gave him that because he only had the mullet up through Lost Years.
Yeah. I mean the coloring is the bigger thing for me. I don't know why Ben Reilly has like very clearly red.
You also question why he's in the regular Spider-Man costume and not his Spider-Man costume?
I didn't even think of that. But then, and each character is like arguing with Kaine about bullshit. It really doesn't matter. And then the Jackal shows up and is teasing him. Then his girl Louise shows up wearing just a shirt, barely covering her lower parts. Then another version of Kaine shows up and snaps her neck. Then,
yeah, this was stupid.
Then Peter Parker shows up and finishes out the inspirational speech. And the finale is Kaine chooses to live on. And this was really dumb. And there's really no point to it. It doesn't change his status quo whatsoever. He's still imprisoned. He's just slightly less edgy and depressed. But that won't change anything when he shows up. Now, let's get into where he will shortly show up. Amazing Spider-Man 608. Some flashback stuff. Damon Ryder is a professor. Ben Reilly applied to be his assistant, and Ben is rocking a full-on mullet at this point, which again, the accuracy can be slightly debated. In the present, Peter Parker is chasing one of Brand New Day's greatest new villains, because I believe part of the edict of Brand New Day was that they wanted to introduce in a string a lot of new villains. Some of them that they may have wanted to be big deals, some of them whatever, and even like arguable supporting cast kind of things. Like there's all kinds of weird stuff like Jackpot is in this era, and you really get them building up other things. But there are a lot of shitty villains from Brand New Day era, and I'd say there's like maybe 2 good ones that have stuck around.
I was gonna say better or worse than the ones Jerry Conway made.
Honestly, I don't know.
They're probably on similar levels, to be honest.
No. Because Jerry Conway created the Punisher and the Jackal.
Right. He also created the Mind Worm. Remember the Mind Worm?
That's pretty terrible.
And the Grizzly.
Grizzly.
Tornado guy.
Grizzly. Nick Spencer saved Grizzly.
Tornado guy's dumb.
Cyclone.
And
What about Mirage? Y'all remember Mirage?
No.
Brand New Day got us Mr. Negative and Overdrive, which are pretty cool. But then you have bad ones like, what is it, Menace?
Yeah, Menace.
And shout out to Mr. Negative because he just was like indirectly the main boss of the PS4 game.
You have Menace, and then our character here is Screwball, which is an instantly dated character.
I hate it so much.
Screwball is the live streaming villain. She has a webcam on her helmet, and she has fans and advertisers somehow. And
I feel like this was like ahead of the curve though, because I mean, still streaming is a big thing now, but
yeah, it like slightly is, but the fact that they didn't know then, it dates it, but also it didn't work I don't know how to describe it. It's really weird because they're talking about like somewhat advanced technology for the era, but also at the same time there is just really, really cringy like technology references.
Oh,
right. Yeah. I thought this felt extremely out of touch. Even for 2010, it felt like, Guggenheim went on the internet and go, okay, what are the kids doing these days? And that's what he came up with.
She steals some bonds, and Peter Parker makes a joke about Norman Osborn. There's our first terrible.
Listen, if you want to look at that, there's a story. It's called Sins Past. We've talked about it on the show before. We haven't reviewed that story, but
God,
if you give us enough likes, Matt will do a live reading with Matt's reaction.
If this video gets 1,000 likes, I
we'll do a live reading with Sins Past, and so you can enjoy that oh so great Norman O face that is drawn by Mike Diodato Jr.
It's also great they both bold and underline the word porn in case you missed the pun. Yep. I hate this.
Thanks,
I hate this so much. Yeah.
So, other status quo stuff. Peter Parker is working at Frontline, which I believe was introduced around Civil War.
That's when the miniseries started.
Yeah, and then following that, you basically had tie-in Frontline miniseries attached to every fucking giant crossover event.
I actually forgot about Frontline entirely, so it was like, oh yeah, this existed.
You had World War Hulk Frontline. I believe Secret Invasion had Frontline series. Yep. The Civil War Frontline series is infamously where Speedball becomes Penance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't read it in like a decade, but I remember liking the Frontline miniseries actually.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
It kind of has like it kind of spins multiple plates. There's a lot of arcs going on.
It's a decently thick trade too, if you can find it.
Yeah, it's like 12 issues. It used to be 2 trades. And Ben Urich is in charge of it or whatever, I guess. And I'm not certain the status of the Daily Bugle at this point because Jonah is the mayor. And at this point, at a certain point, they started referring to it as the DB, trying to be more modern or something.
Well, Robbie would still be EIC at the Bugle, and the whole big thing is Frontline is Ben's paper.
Okay, yeah. But I think actually it's sort of interesting, the whole Screwball situation, because Peter can't do his usual thing of selling photos of himself fighting this villain, because this villain records the entire thing and it's already viral before Peter can develop the photos.
Yeah, the story's web is already done.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
It's a somewhat interesting gimmick that they don't really dive enough into in this.
That was that was a thing I was taught like in college. Like you got to be able to get the cusp of the story, but I thought that was like weird how out of all elements to kind of be like, oh yeah, you're on the nail with that. This was the one element that was was like actually real world correct.
Then Ryder shows up at Frontline office starts calling Peter Ben in public. And we get cringy editor notes referencing back to the annual, where it's like, it's an editor note from Guggenheim, which never I don't think writers should be making the editor notes really ever.
Right.
It's only ever used for comedy, and it's never funny. Like I think Zdarsky does that in some of his books, and Guggenheim is like, check out the classic annual, and Stephen Wacker, who edited the Spider-Man books like fucking forever, he just left recently at the end with Dan Slott. I forget who the current editor is. But
it's not Wacker?
No. Wacker is like, hey, it's not classic. It just came out like a few months ago. And Guggenheim's like the newly classic or whatever. It's just stupid. And we get some of Raptor's origin. His dumb powers come from work that he allegedly did with Ben Reilly. He is obsessed with dinosaurs and thinks humans evolved from dinosaurs.
Amazing how science already just doesn't discredit him right now, but this is the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, and there's this weird point in flashback where Damon is reassuring Ben Reilly. He's like, "Don't worry about the funding. Don't worry about the funding." And it's like, I don't.
He's like crazy on cocaine. He's like, "I got it."
It seemed like they were like
Sauron to show up and be like, "You're fucking stupid."
It seemed like they were making a note with those comments, but it doesn't really connect to what happens later. And their theory is that there's a missing link, similar to the whole like apes to humans, that there's one individual or one species in the middle which connects them. And so the missing link in this case is somehow some dinosaur human hybrid.
I just realized something. This is the plot of Super Mario Bros. Movie.
I've never seen it actually, so
you have to watch it. It's amazing.
I mean, Bob Hoskins is in it.
It's the whole thing behind Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's that people evolved from dinosaurs in alternate reality, and then whatever.
John Leguizamo.
Yeah, yeah, John Leguizamo's in the movie. It's amazing casting. It's so good. No, the movie sucks.
So if this movie gets 20,000 likes, we'll do a live commentary on the Super Mario Brothers film.
And what they're trying to do is create from scratch in a test tube this missing link organism. But instead, as scientists do in the Marvel Universe, Damon Ryder just injects himself with dinosaur DNA.
As one does.
Which I feel like is also probably the plot of the next Jurassic World movie.
Are we going to get a third one? Can we not?
We definitely are. It made like $500 million.
People are stupid, man.
This is true. But the joke's on us because we're reading Spider-Man comics from Brand New Day.
Yep.
And there's this weird thing in this issue which really doesn't come back, where it's like a full page of May and Jameson enjoying their honeymoon, but she's a little homesick, so she wants to stop back in Queens before they continue the honeymoon. And
this is back in the annual, but did you guys all enjoy J. Jonah Jameson Sr. talking about how May is the fire in his loins?
Yeah, it was kind of cute.
It was out of place.
And another point, similar to like the whole Screwball being the story angle, there's a weird moment where Guggenheim is like, the financial depression has caused lots of empty buildings throughout the city, which supervillains can easily use as lairs. And I feel like another writer, like a really smart writer, could somehow do something interesting and do like a whole arc about that.
Or even a somewhat smart writer, like a capable writer.
Yeah. Where it's like
interesting way to incorporate the recession into the Marvel Universe.
Supervillain real estate during the recession. Maybe like supervillains start shorting things because they cause destruction. I don't know.
And then Adam McKay can make an overrated movie about it.
Yes, Peter shot a tracer on Raptor, but I guess I don't. Raptor left his coat behind, and it's not really explained. It's never come back to whether he knew about the tracer or if it's just coincidence. He doesn't explain that because he's not that familiar with Spider-Man. He didn't know Ben as Spider-Man at all. And where he went is he went to where Peter Parker, who he thinks is Ben Reilly, where he lives. And this is where we get introduced to Michelle Gonzalez, everyone's favorite love interest for Peter Parker.
This is who Zendaya plays, right?
Yes, Michelle. And this issue, the final page, very hype. Kaine shows up looking pretty damn fresh. He's rocking a nice, like, flowy coat. Nice monochromatic.
That is not a coat. That is a duster, sir. Get it right.
Nice monochromatic fit, some flowing hair. He's looking pretty fly.
Looks like he smells like the sewer. Yeah.
609. Let's get into this. Kaine and Pete immediately start fighting. And, I mean, Kaine started by choking him. But Pete really carries this fight by provoking him with his quips. And this is just immediately, I was kind of annoyed because, again, this is the first time we've seen Kaine since the end of the Clone Saga. And if anyone actually read the Clone Saga, Kaine, like, totally turns face. And I think didn't he turn himself into the authorities? Is that the last thing we saw?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I guess follows into that Web of issue where he's super depressed and trips and realizes that he doesn't want himself to die.
Well, that's the other thing. When he turned himself in, there was nothing else for the character to do. His arc was done.
Yeah, it was done, and also, again, he was pretty good, like, on good terms with Peter Parker.
Yeah, and Ben Reilly, like.
Yeah, and there was a weird dynamic all the time between Kaine and MJ. So maybe with MJ out of the picture, Kaine is more of a dick. I don't know. It's just really, like, this didn't work for me because they're trying to call back to the Clone Saga but completely ignore what actually happens in the Clone Saga. Kaine's character and it's similar to what happens when Ben Reilly finally comes back, where they're just totally out of character and twisted for drama and to hype up a villain. And at some point here in this issue, Guggenheim, in a shitty editor's note, threatens to quit the book after next issue. And guess what? Marc Guggenheim never wrote another issue of Spider-Man.
Thank God.
Which I think is just coincidence. But I didn't know in the first place that Marc Guggenheim was in fact one of the rotating writers in the Brand New Day era. So the concept of Brand New Day was, let's cancel before One More Day, you had multiple Spider-Man titles. You had Amazing Spider-Man, you had Peter Parker Spider-Man, or whatever it was called at that point. You had Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, written by Peter David. I think a fourth one, Sensational or whatever the hell. Multiple Spider-Man titles. And Marvel, sort of similar to what they did in 1999, where they crunched it down from 4 books to 2. They're like, let's crunch it down from 3 or 4 to 1. And Amazing Spider-Man is going to come out 3 times a month. That's
just
crazy.
ridiculous.
So we're going to hire, I think it's 3 to 5 writers, and they're going to trade off arcs. And you had some kind of interesting names. Mark Waid was involved in certain chunks. You had Bob Gale, screenwriter. I believe he's most known as the screenwriter from some of the Back to the Future movies, but he's also written some random comic books, like some shitty Daredevil stuff, which is getting collected for the first time ever. And Joe Kelly was involved, Marc Guggenheim, and the Golden Boy, who stuck around the entire time, was Dan Slott. And then they
Mark Waid involved too in that rotation?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the way it worked is you had 2 stages. So you had the initial group of writers, and then past a certain point, Marvel or the writers themselves were like, yeah, we can't do this anymore, or we need fresh blood. depending on the perspective. And so they brought in a new group, and the only person to survive through both groups is Dan Slott, and then he got to be the only writer eventually. And so Guggenheim leaves after this, and this is right around where we're about to kick more into high gear as we go towards the Gauntlet and then Grim Hunt, and then the end of the Brand New Day era. Pete references the Kanye West and Taylor Swift drama, and interestingly, because it's controversial, but it definitely says maybe a little bit about Marc Guggenheim and also dates this book, and you can analyze it in the context of then and in the context of now. Peter Parker totally takes the Taylor Swift side. Kaine, meanwhile, is going through clone degeneration, but he totally... Oh, the interesting part is that Kaine remembers that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Despite One More Day, which was supposed to erase everyone's knowledge, but it's super fucking obvious because, of course, they're clones.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I don't know.
I don't.
If you actually think about
it, because like Felicia doesn't remember who he is, and he was a pretty major part of her life.
No, the implication is that he has to know because they're clones, but that doesn't. I guess it's like a dumb, flimsy, like shared memory kind of deal.
No.
Because it has to be that because of course there's the 151 split or whatever.
I think you put more thought into it than anyone writing this book did.
That's correct. And also, speaking of dated internet jokes and stuff like that, throughout this arc, Marc Guggenheim, like 3 times as a comedic tool, uses fake website names as quips for Peter Parker.
Yep.
And it's terrible every time. Also, multiple times, he references the Hypno Hustler.
Why?
I think that's actually a common thing for some Spider-Man writers. Is like I'll have Peter Parker reference a really goofy, obscure Spider-Man villain.
And that in itself is supposed to be funny.
Yeah. It's like, haha, they referenced that. That's like, honestly, that was like the point where Howard the Duck was up until like a few years ago. It's like, if you reference Howard the Duck, that's funny.
Yep.
And Pete, he finally gets home. Michelle Gonzalez, she's fine, but she's drawn very exploitatively. I mean, it's not really over the top like it may have been in like 1993, but she's pretty shapely, and they have her clothes covering just specific spots. I think it's over the top.
It's a bit way too much. Yeah.
She tells Pete where Raptor went or where she told him to go. And I never fully picked up on this either, because he goes to Aunt May's house, which his cousins are staying there, which that makes sense. But like it's set up that he's going to where Harry is, and Harry's there. I don't know why Harry is hanging out with Peter Parker's cousins, which he's never met.
Oh wait, is Harry married at this point? I think he would be.
I mean, he should be married to Liz, but after his death and everything, I'm not sure how they reconciled and stuff.
No, they didn't. They divorced. Okay, so that's why he's hanging out with Pete's cousins.
Wait, they divorced, but we couldn't have Peter Parker do that with MJ if we wanted to get rid of the marriage, because Joe Quesada said that he didn't want kids being divorced having Spider-Man be divorced. Marvel, this is a crock of shit.
But I don't know why Harry's there, because we don't
to hit on Pete's hot cousins.
Yeah, we don't see Pete like introduce him or anything, and also, I think it actually happened between the annual and this. There's like a reference to Pete and Harry's relationship being a little iffy, and I think that gets solved or developed between this. So I'm not even certain what their relationship is at this point.
I have no idea.
And yeah, his cousins are there just to be used as background. I don't think they have any lines. One of them may have like one generic line. And Raptor is there with a gun to Harry's head. And so Pete has to go in, and he's about to possibly reveal his secret identity by lifting up his shirt to reveal his costume. And in this final panel, it's like totally it's like totally clear that he's lifted up his shirt like halfway, and his costume is just totally showing. They were not very subtle, and obviously that's not really what happened. Let's take this moment before we move into the next issue. What do you guys think about Raptor's design?
Terrible.
It's awful. It's disgusting. It's so bad.
It's like a shitty crap. Who's that like generic mercenary guy who's sometimes in Spider-Man stuff?
The Predator.
The Punisher.
No, it's not the Predator.
He has a predator mouth though.
No,
He
he
does
doesn't
have
have any
Predator
mouth. He just has like a helmet.
No, his mouth does that thing.
Yeah, his jaw like extends down.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You read the book.
I think he was on Wildpath.
No, Vince, we did that podcast months ago.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's something back or pack or Hopper or
Wild Dog.
no, that's DC.
Backpack.
Sportsmaster.
Deadpool.
Hitman.
Hit Monkey.
That's a character I don't want to talk about.
Vigilante.
Paladin. Do you know who Paladin is?
No, I don't know who Paladin is.
Okay. Raptor looks like a ripoff of Paladin, but with stupid teeth. Like almost exactly. I will show
that took
Paladin.
4 minutes to get to the conclusion of.
Yes. It's a really boring design.
Yeah.
There's
This
not
is
much.
a really boring story.
And his whole teeth and arm claw things are just really weird looking and cringy.
I have a question. Can we talk about the era of Adi Granov covers for Amazing Spider-Man? I always thought that was weird. Every cover kind of looked the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think the final one where it's like Pete punching Kaine is actually kind of decent.
Yeah, but Kaine's face is all healed up, so he doesn't even look like Kaine.
It's kind of cool, but also doesn't remotely represent what happens in the issue.
Right. I think some of these covers are pretty neat, and some of them are just not. This one I'm all right with.
I mean, when we get to Grim Hunt, just jumping ahead, there is a Grim Hunt cover, which I think I will actually ironically use for the thumbnail, and it's like Craven just standing. I don't think it's a groundhog, but I think it's a terrible, terrible cover. But we'll get to that when we get to that. 610, Raptor lights Aunt May's house on fire. So presumably after this issue, that will be dealt with. Kaine shows up just in time to fuck everything up. Then Screwball shows up just in time to fuck everything up, which allows time for the civilians, Harry and the generic multicolor-haired hostages to escape. And with all of the civilian characters out of the way, Kaine unmasks Peter Parker in front of Raptor. Quickly, I don't know if this is just Guggenheim's bad scripting and the bad editor, or if this is Kaine like being playful, because then he acknowledges that he was wrong later. He says that Peter Parker is a clone of Ben Reilly, which of course is backwards. And I'm pretty certain that Kaine knew that when he left off in the Clone Saga. But then he just ignores that, and he's like, yeah, sure, they're not the same person, but it doesn't really matter at all because they are the same person. And speaking of old white dudes writing Spider-Man comics, but I don't know how you guys felt about this, Peter Parker talks about the Beatles and how he has to replace Aunt May's Beatles albums. Some nice boomer references.
I hate this book.
Peter Parker wins.
Worst thing we've ever read on this podcast.
Pete wins. He pummels down Raptor, and he's given his speech the whole time as he's punching him, and somehow knows that Ben Reilly was innocent in the original scenario. But I don't know where we got to that point, because it's not like Peter has any kind of deep investigation into what actually happened, and Raptor doesn't reveal it either. We know from flashbacks.
And Pete just assumes.
Yeah.
Also, do we know from flashbacks that Ben was innocent? Because I'm still saying it's his fault.
Well, that's the thing, is it happens between panels. Well, okay, so going back to the flashbacks, Damon Ryder has stupid dinosaur DNA. He runs home and locks himself in his lab. Ben Reilly goes to try and help him and fix him. They get into a fist fight because Ryder is fucking crazy. Ben's being a little aggressive with it, but he's also trying to wrangle down this guy with weird dinosaur DNA who's freaking out. Then Kaine just randomly shows up and starts punching both of them because it's Ben Reilly. And Ben jams Kaine into a fireplace, which causes a fire. Kaine runs away. Well, no, he doesn't run away. And then at a certain point, I believe it's implied between panels, somehow Raptor murders his family. Because they don't burn. They don't burn or anything. Between panels, they're suddenly dead on the ground.
I assumed it was smoke inhalation.
Oh, it could be that. So, yeah, I mean, that's not said.
You're right.
And then I guess indirectly, Ben Reilly caused the fire with Kaine, but wasn't necessarily in his control. He could have focused on saving the family or something like that. But I wouldn't blame Ben Reilly for this.
I don't know. I think the way he handled the dinosaur thing was extremely aggressive.
Well, how the fuck do you handle someone who injected themselves with dinosaur DNA and is suddenly growing teeth and jaw?
I don't know, but I wouldn't break into their house.
But yeah. And Ben Reilly left Raptor to live, and in the meantime died. And so Raptor still has crazy dinosaur DNA. And that's his whole motivation. But in the end of this issue, it doesn't matter anyways, because everyone gets away. Peter Parker is left alone with the cops, puts on a quick web mask to keep his identity. And before that, Kaine and Raptor ran away. But it doesn't matter because Kaine chokes Raptor to death, and Raptor will never appear again.
Thank God.
And Kaine, we will see his next appearance, where he will have a transformation. Now,
yeah, I guess he will, won't he?
Yes. Let's quickly talk about two other little web of mini backups. We have from issue 5, DeMatteis and a story drawn by Chad Hardin. And I believe it was this one. This art is fucking awful. I'm not as familiar with Chad Hardin, but this is really bad. And I don't understand this story. Peter Parker is scrubbing a toilet, but it's Ben Reilly, but he says he's not Ben Reilly, but it's definitely Ben Reilly. But I don't know why he's working
nobody. Did you look at the title of the story? He's no one.
No, it's Ben Reilly.
With the soul patch.
Yes, with a terrible facial hair. And I just don't. I mean, he worked at a shitty coffee shop and stuff like that. But all the flashback stuff that we got focused on for Ben Reilly was he must have had 5 jobs as a professor's assistant across all the flashbacks we've seen.
Right.
Here he is as a janitor, as a sub janitor, because his janitor boss bullies him.
Yeah. This is terrible. And I want to keep in mind, Matt wasn't able to read this, so he's just getting the full reaction of it.
Yeah, I love this.
He
No, you
saved,
don't. You didn't have to read it.
he saves a family from a burglary and then rides out on his motorcycle. And that's really all that happens. This is like entirely inconsequential. But here's the thing. He references Janine Godby, and there's a panel of him looking at her like in a morgue as a dead body, which is
What?
totally not what happened to her. She, just like Kaine, turned herself into the police and has never been seen of since. And so I was totally confused. Which I guess DeMatteis didn't end the Clone Saga. I guess at this point, maybe the editors were like, "Hey, DeMatteis, you are closely linked to Ben Reilly through the Lost Years and everything like that." But the editors, they don't really want to actually reference the Clone Saga. And DeMatteis didn't finish it, and he probably doesn't care because it's not how he wanted it to go. This was really stupid. I think this is actually a major, major continuity error in this very awful, like 8-page shitty story. But the art was really bad in my opinion. Now, final thing for this episode, Web of Spider-Man number 8. I want to say that the A story is drawn by Javier Rodriguez, who often used to work as a colorist, but relatively recently killed it on Spider-Woman. And I wish he drew, and I was flipping through that, and it doesn't look remotely as clean and refined as Spider-Woman and more recent stuff, but I still really wish that he was drawing this story that we had to read instead of Val.
I also like to say this story is good, but hey, the theme of this episode is it's not.
No. And so this thing, it's like Ben Reilly back up again. And it starts with him talking about how he found out he was a clone. And I was like, I don't really understand this because like he found out he was a clone pretty much before any of the Lost Years stuff. Like that's the genesis of Lost Years. Is at the end of Spider-Man 151, he wakes up in the chimney stack. And well, no, I guess never mind. This doesn't make sense. So he wakes up in the chimney stack, goes to Peter Parker's house, and then is like, that person is living Peter Parker's life. Maybe they stole my life, or maybe I'm the clone. I'm not sure.
He steals some clothes and money and pieces out.
And then he doesn't like the whole who is the clone question doesn't officially get addressed until they run into each other again. But this issue is set in the Lost Years point, but talks about him finding out he's a clone. So I think that is another error. And the story also starts out with...
Is it a metaphor?
I don't know.
I don't know. It also starts out with him putting a pistol in his mouth, ready to blow his brains out. And I don't actually remember what happens between that page and the next. I think he just kind of is like, he's like, I realize I'm a clone, so I'm going to go commit suicide. But then right before committing suicide, the fact that I'm a clone, I can do whatever the fuck I want. So he finds himself in Rome teaching English to the children of rich people or nationals or whatever.
It's these English diplomats.
In Rome?
Yep.
Yeah.
In Rome.
Mm-hmm.
He went overseas.
Yes.
During the Lost Years.
Yes.
During these 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And for some part of this time, he was in Rome.
Yep.
Well,
teaching English to the children of English diplomats.
How did he get there on his motorcycle?
I don't know.
Who else was in Europe at this time?
Everyone. Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn. Probably Gwen Stacy, at least one of her.
And there's a weird...
There's children too, Matt.
Yes, that is true. There's a weird sequence here where he talks about his spider sense, like triggering when he's in big crowds. And it's like for half a second, I was like, okay, another really, really shitty spider sense thing. But then I was thinking, like if you had a Spider-Man which was just totally mentally and emotionally fucked up, like could their spider sense get out of whack and get triggered by like an anxiety kind of thing?
That's the perfect Spider-Verse character for millennials in 2019.
I feel like
I was literally about to say that sounds like an alternate universe Spider-Man character I would like to read about.
yeah, I mean, I think that actually connects, but it's not explained at all in the story. It's like a one-off, two-panel thing which doesn't come up again.
Yeah.
He has his Italian friends, and I guess randomly in their friends circle, there is this rich woman whose father is a big shot, and she's into Ben Reilly, and so his friend is like, ask her out, ask her out. So
Oh
he asks.
God, I don't care.
He tries to ask her out, and she asks him out, and their date is set. And then he comes home to this like mob type, tells him to run because they did a background check, and Ben Reilly goes on like a weird rampage, beating up this mob guy, and then he
Almost kills him.
and then he runs away on his motorcycle, and that's the end of the story.
And then there's like, and then someone's looking at the mob guy is still alive. Oh my God, I know who this is at the end. It all clicked for me.
Well, isn't there like a silhouette? Is it Kaine or something?
No, it's a man behind a very large desk with a picture of Ben.
Norman
It's
Osborn.
It's Norman.
Oh, well, I guess
Cool.
that
It made a little bit more sense now.
it improves the relevance, not much else.
Okay. Okay, wait. Okay, wait. Okay. Ben Reilly went to Rome.
Yes.
I'm still on this. He somehow got on a plane and flew to Rome.
Yeah.
And he
Could have gotten there by boat.
He also brought his motorcycle to Rome.
Probably just bought a new one.
With what money? How did he get the
Probably
plane ticket?
stole one.
Stole a plane ticket and a motorcycle?
He couldn't have. He could have got there by boat.
Well, like stow away with a motorcycle?
You're putting a lot of stock into the motorcycle thing, man.
He brought a motorcycle to Rome.
Also, he doesn't get on his motorcycle at the end. He's on a train.
Yeah. I just assumed that it was a motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
Also, I will note he did not get the chance to check out the Coliseum.
No, he finally got to see the Coliseum after being there for 6 weeks. That's what he says.
Oh, okay. I thought he said he didn't at all. So that was a bunch of random Clone Saga callback Spider-Man stuff from around 2009 and 2010. And next episode,
We're gonna talk about Spider-Girl, Mayday Parker.
no.
Well, I'd like to wrap this episode up by saying, you know, if you're an idiot that likes to say that the 2010s are the best decade of comics, God, you're wrong.
This barely makes it though. So next episode actually is going to be Kaine's next appearance, Grim Hunt.
Grim Hunt. Yes. Are we doing Grim Hunt? Is Grim Hunt one episode?
Yes, it'll be a meaty one.
I'm very excited for Grim Hunt because I've not actually read it, but I've got a general idea of what goes down, and I'm sure it's going to be garbage.
Oh, cool! It's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
But it's got to be more entertaining than this trash.
Now, what we are skipping, and I'm sure I'll go into this deeper next episode, is that Grim Hunt was kind of the culmination of the second half of Brand New Day. So the first half of Brand New Day, the concept is let's introduce a bunch of shitty new villains. Let's get rid of the marriage, get rid of the secret identity revealed, bring Peter Parker back to basics, as they claim. And the second half is this long epic leading into Grim Hunt. And it's basically a ripoff of Nightfall, where you have...
What? Such a stupid concept for Spider-Man.
In quick succession, you have a lot of major Spider-Man villains going after Spider-Man, trying to like cripple him. And some of the Gauntlet stories are really good. Some of them are really bad. And the one that I think is the best, Matt hates anyway. And I don't really necessarily like it on like a meta level either. But I think like writing and art kind of combined, it might be the best one.
The
For
art's
the 4 of you that
kind
are
of cool.
watching,
The art's kind of. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
yeah, for the 4 of you that are watching, he's talking about the one where the lizard eats his son.
I hate it so much. The art's kind of neat. The art's kind of neat. It's like it's stylish, I guess, but oh my god, I hate that story.
And there are also like weird. Some of them are weird sequels. Like they brought Roger Stern back to do a Juggernaut arc.
Why?
And then some of them are not who you think they are. Like there's a Vulture arc, but it's not Adrian Toomes because
Any new Vulture?
we need shitty new characters. And then the Rhino one is kind of cool because Alexei, this is after the whole Flowers for Rhino thing, which is several years ago at this point. He's like kind of retired and reformed. And there's this like shitty, like very edgy, aggressive Rhino who like fucks his life up.
Wait. Is it a Russian mobster who's played by Paul Giamatti?
No. But there's some somewhat interesting stuff, some somewhat terrible stuff. And then it all culminates with Bane, as it were, coming around. But actually, it's the Kravinoff family to resurrect their patriarch. And the Kravinoffs, they don't like spiders.
And then Kraven picks up Spider-Man and breaks his back.
We have seen, well, we are familiar, sort of, not really, with 3 major Kravinoffs. So we have the original Kraven the Hunter, very iconic death in Kraven's Last Hunt. Then we have the Grim Hunter, who was killed by Kaine, right? Yeah, Kaine.
Yeah, he was killed by Kaine.
I think Kaine broke his neck.
Kaine killed him, and then
I don't think he just chokes him out.
Maybe
Yeah.
I think he threw him into a chimney.
Yes, and then we have Kraven the Hunter #2, who I believe we briefly saw on like one late Clone Saga thing.
Yeah, remember he sleeps with his dad's mistress.
Yes, and as I revealed, that Kraven the
He
Hunter
fights tigers and he fights lions in the nude.
Yeah.
and that Kraven the Hunter eventually goes off to Hollywood to star in reality TV.
Amazing.
Can we get Kraven for this podcast just for fun?
We may.
Only if this episode gets 30,000 likes.
So thumbs up and tune in next time. Thanks for watching.